Hey everyone, Azil here. Before this video starts, there's some stuff I need to say. The video you're about to see contains discussion of the use and effects of illegal and potentially dangerous drugs. According to not only YouTube's official content guidelines, but also my own morals, I cannot condone the use of hard drugs, nor can the person I'm interviewing. The decision to upload this video was not easy. However, I believe that the pursuits of journalism and education outweigh the potential dangers of introducing people to substance use. I can't stop anyone from doing drugs, but I want to be absolutely clear that the risks involved with the use of any substances, including those mentioned in this video, are significant and potentially permanent. Stay safe out there. So we're going to be talking about a couple of drugs today, but the main one that got me hooked on the idea of doing this video is something you told me about at a VR party a couple of days ago called DXM. Tell me about it.
Yeah, it's one of those ones that I don't normally talk a whole bunch about because it's just such a unique out there drug that I've tried before. And it's not one that I always will sit there and recommend to people, but it's definitely one of the ones that's given me the most or a super unique experience. DXM is one of those drugs where it kind of almost completely flips your sense of reality on its head. The best way I can describe it is you basically take what you do know, and by that I don't mean your physical body functions, your motor functions, your ability to speak, your ability to use a controller or look around and understand what's going on, but it's your sense of self, your sense of identity, that kind of knowledge that you have for yourself just completely goes away. It's a very interesting, unique experience comparatively to, say, shrooms or LSD, something like that, which gives you that sense of ego death, loss of self, but now you're also losing your sense of identity, not just your who you are, that kind of deal.
Yeah, and you said you've tried it twice. Of those two times, how many were in VR?
Once was in VR, and then once was IRL.
Okay, tell me the differences that you noticed between the two.
So the first time I did it in IRL, I was with a friend, and they had brought up the idea to me, and I was kind of iffy about it. They showed it to me. They're like, hey, I got this, like the actual substance itself. Some of the connotations around it are usually seen as a bit more unpleasant due to how people usually take it. But he had just gotten like the actual substance itself, so there was nothing else mixed in with it. And he was like, hey, do you wanna try it? And so I was like, okay, I'll try it out. IRL, it is the same effects. You lose your ego, you lose your self-identity, you kind of forget who you are, but not in a bad way. It's not uncomfortable. It's not like I don't know where I am or who I am or what's going on. You just don't fully identify with everything that pertains to you as a person. So IRL and in VR, you get both of those. The difference IRL is you still have all of the recognizable stimuli that you kind of are used to in your everyday life that you see, either if you're in your home or your friend's house. You see the things that you're kind of familiar with. Well, everything seems a bit different. It still feels a bit new, but there's things that are recognizable. For example, if you go into the restroom and you look in the mirror, you look at and you see the person in the mirror. You're able to identify with that because there's some recognizable features. You can move your hands. The person you've seen is moving your hands. You move your face. So your brain goes, okay, that's me, and I kind of recognize it, have those recognizable features. I kind of know where I'm at. VR is almost the exact opposite of that, though. When you look into VR, everything around you isn't very recognizable, except for your avatar, which makes it an interesting feature. If you do use the same avatar, your avatar kind of becomes that point of recognition for you, where it's like, I do recognize what is happening here. Within VR, everything that happens around you is kind of just accepted as is. That's a point of DXM I guess I should touch on a bit. DXM kind of removes that sense of doubt in your brain, and it gives you a sense of acceptance of pretty much anything that's going on. It changes your perspective to a point where if something happens, you just are like, oh, okay, that's just kind of how it is. In VRChat, people can start flying around in the air, and you're like, okay, that's VR, nonsense. You obviously can't do that IRL. But when you're on DXM and somebody starts flying around, your brain just kind of goes, oh, hey, that's cool. I didn't know you could do that. And then it just kind of accepts that as like, oh, okay, that must be something that you can do. And you just kind of grow with it. So if you walk up to the mirror and you look at yourself in the mirror, the same IRL wise, especially if you have an avatar you recognize, you move your hands and you're like, oh, the hands move when I move the hands. And then you move your head, you talk, the mouth moves. You're like, okay, well, that must be me then. And then your brain just kind of accepts it as is. It doesn't really go beyond that base level of thinking. It decides that's how it is, and it's like it moves on from there. If you change your avatar, then it goes, oh, this is kind of what I look like now. And you just kind of accept it for that. You are now that person, and that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Is there ever a point where that dissociation makes you afraid?
Personally, I never had that issue. With what I tried, I did a decently large amount, which I wouldn't say is smart for only doing it a couple times, but I did a decently large amount, and there was never a point where I felt uncomfortable. That's something that other people can relate to if they've ever tried like LSD or shrooms or something like that. Like if you do too much and you get to that point of ego death, which is what makes people very, very uncomfortable on those drugs, where all the things that you hold on to, how you are, who you are, your social status, the things that make you or define you as you, when you start to lose those, you get very uncomfortable. You get scared almost. But with DXM, that never happened. It was almost the opposite, where you lose that like identity, but you also lose the sense of self. So with all of the new interesting changes, everything that happened, I never really felt uncomfortable. I really never felt like scared of anything, even though things could seem very extreme or very dramatic at times, because all of a sudden there's giant people walking around and big avatars, or you're at a rave and there's crazy things happening and fire and all that, or you go to a really weird world with giant monsters where normally you would think it would make you feel uncomfortable because it feels so real, but at the same time your brain just kind of accepts it for what it is. So you never really get that extreme sense of panic. The most I ever got a few times where I was around a lot of people talking, and the stimulate, like the sensory overload of me trying to absorb a bunch of information, kind of made me overload. It was a bit too much. It did make me a bit uncomfortable, and then I'd just walk away.
So you kind of just become comfortable in your new reality that is around you.
Yeah, pretty much. It kind of just takes your reality and sets it for where you are, what it is. It really extends the cool part about the virtual reality. It's not something, like I said, it's not something that I would just recommend go and do at any point in time, but it was a very unique experience. It really changed over the idea of virtual reality being this thing that's not real to this thing that, if you're in a different mindset, it very much is real. Because if I lift up this headset and look around my room, that's very much real. But when I put it back on and I'm sitting with you here in virtual space, this is also very much real. Reality is simply perspective. So if you're in a mindset to accept it as real, then it is real for the moment in time. And it just allowed that mindset to take over 100%.
I've seen videos of like older people trying VR, and they get so immersed in it because they're not used to this idea of even a computer screen being immersed and connected to a character. So when you're in that virtual space, it is the closest thing to reality you've experienced other than reality. So it is scarily real.
That's honestly almost the perfect way that I can describe it. For you at that moment in time, that is what your brain perceives as reality. If you lift up the headset to go and do something, it's almost like this weird little electrical snap, and you go, oh, this is kind of reality for now. And then if you put the headset back on, there's this little snap where you kind of re-figure out how to use the controllers, and you realize you're in a headset for a few minutes, and then you get distracted by something cool and mystical, and then you just forget. Your body takes over, because it's not like you forget everything. You know how to use your controllers and all of that. Your body takes over. You know what you're doing. You have the muscle memory. Just the perception of memories and things that are happening around you kind of just become a bit hazy, and everything you're doing just becomes this kind of new experience, kind of like you're like not a toddler, but a younger child almost, or everything you're experiencing is kind of this new mystical thing.
So all of this is incredible, and it's really amazing that you had a positive experience on it. Why did humans create or discover this chemical? What is it normally used for?
For that, we'll hop back to what I was saying. The original idea behind it, which is why when my friend brought it up to me, I was pretty skeptical. I was like, I don't know about that, is it's a dissociative, and it's originally used in like cough syrup or cough medicines, that kind of deal. And I've known what it is for a really long time, and I know forever kids, people, adults would go and buy like cough medicine and chug it to get really high, but then they'd get really sick because of all the stuff in it, and there's like acetaminophen and gustafen and other things in cough syrup that can make you really sick if you have a lot of it. So my friend brought it up to me, and I was like, yeah, I'm okay. I'll stick to other things if I want to go and do something or whatever. I'm not going to go and chug cough syrup. But he told me, he was like, no, I just have like the actual substance itself. So that's what made it interesting to me. But that's what it's normally used for in everyday life. Is it's a dissociative that's put in cough syrup, which is pretty interesting actually. The way cough syrup makes your brain not cough is it makes you dissociate a little bit. They give you things like gustafen, which gets rid of phlegm. They give you acetaminophen, which helps dilate your blood vessels, make your blood a bit thinner, helps with headaches or fever if you're coughing if it's a fever. And then they give you some dextromorphin, which is a mild dissociative in small amounts. And it essentially just makes your brain forget to cough is what it does. So it lessens the symptoms so you don't feel them as much, and then your brain just kind of forgets to cough.
Okay. Would you say that DXM was a more or less positive experience compared to other stuff?
It could definitely be considered up there. Positive wise, I don't think it's something that's like has medicinal uses or is like super beneficial. It was a fun and interesting experience. I wouldn't see it having any sort of medicinal effects. I didn't have any sort of like cravings to do it again. I didn't feel any addictive properties. The only reason I did it again was because I just wanted to see what it was like in VR, because when I first experienced it, the thought immediately hit me, this would be incredible in VR, which it was. I mean, I forgot who I was in a sense, and I believed I was my avatar. I believed everything that was happening was actually going on. I would go to touch somebody and my hand would phase through them, and I'd go, oh, okay, you can't touch people here. That sounds okay, I guess. That's cool. You just go with it. But in terms of like positivity, the only drugs that I consider to be positive would be psychedelics. That would be like shrooms or LSD. I think those psychedelics can have really good positive effects on people. If you're in the right mindset, you're around good people, you're doing them properly, you're not taking a whole bunch of them, but you have good reasons to be doing them, I think those can be very positive. I don't think DXM has like positive properties or effects. At least personally, I didn't get anything like that. I think it's something that if you were to do it, it would just be to have fun and not to try and get anything out of it like you would with a psychedelic.
Right, because you've described to me in the past like the long-term positive effects you've had from things like shrooms and MDMA. It sounds like DXM is just a one-and-done hell of a time.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it was. I tried it. I was like, oh, that's really fun and cool. Like, would I do it again? Possibly. I tried it in IRL. I tried it in VR. I was like, that was freaking awesome. It was an amazing time. A bit disorienting when the effects wore off, because then I had to like rejumble all the information in my head because everything just felt a bit scrambled. But overall it was a great time. But I wouldn't find it as something to do to find something for yourself or glean anything like with shrooms or doing MDMA in a social setting with your friends or with people, or LSD to, find out more about yourself or the world, which you really can do with those.
It's also important to remember that even though certain drugs have no proof of chemical addiction, there are things that can happen to anyone on any drug that can be very bad if you don't know what you're doing or if you are not in a good headspace for it. I waited a very long time before I finally decided to go anywhere further than weed and try shrooms. And when I did, it was with a little plate of snacks ready for me, my anxiety medication right there, and a bunch of really cool people around me in VR with the ability to take my headset off and be with my girlfriend if everything goes wrong. Like, I prepared. And that is always a good first step no matter what you are putting in your body.
Oh yeah, which is what you should always do. I think drugs are cool and fun, and you can have great times doing them, especially with psychedelics. But I always tell everybody that I'm ever around, because a lot of my friends know that I've done a lot of these things. Like, I don't do them all the time, that kind of stuff, but I've done them. And they'll ask me about it, and my number one thing I tell anybody immediately, I'm like, hey, like, if you want to do these things, there's important steps that need to be taken to do them. Are you feeling depressed? Do you feel like you're trying to escape? Are you wanting to do this because something's wrong in your life right now? You should never do things like that just because there's something going on. There's better avenues that can be used to help with your mental health, with your physical health, what's going around in your life. These things should be used after the fact, once you get better, once you're feeling like you're in a good space, when you're around good people, when you're in a good environment, to help reflect on what the bad things that did happen, help reflect on the good times, the bad times, and give you a more deep look on yourself and the people you're around, and think about the things you want to keep in your life, the things you want to get rid of in your life, because that's what psychedelics are really good for, is just giving you a very broad perspective. And trying to grab that broad perspective when you're having a really hard time with the now is never smart. And then don't also feel like you need to do them either. Like, don't feel like you're missing out on anything, because I'm telling you, I've been to 100 parties sober. I'm usually a DD. You don't have to be doing drugs with everybody to be cool. You don't got to get super drunk with everybody to be cool. You can just have fun at places and have a few beers. You don't got to do everything. You should never feel pressured to do anything. Everything you ever want to do should be done on your own terms.
If your first answer to someone offering you drugs is no, it should stay no, no matter how many times they ask.
100%. If you feel like you don't want to do something and then somebody offers you something, you're like, yeah, nah, I'm good for tonight. I'm good for now. And then they come back and you're a bit more drunk and your inhibitions are a bit low, or you smoke some weed, you got a bit high, your inhibitions are a bit low, and you're like, maybe. Remember, you said no to begin with for a reason.
Regret is a big thing that can happen for a lot of reasons on drugs. Don't let it happen to you.
Tell me a story, I wanna hear it. You might think it's boring, but I'm interested. Tell me a story, I wanna hear it. You might think it's boring, but I'm interested.